Anesa. Welcome back to my video, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I post videos twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. Today's video is going to be a ranking of all of my Colourpop 9-pan palettes. I do not own all of the 9-pan palettes Colourpop sells. I own majority of them, but there's some that I still have to add to my collection, which I'm waiting for a nice sale and for Colourpop to open back up so I can definitely get my hands on those, because I've been wanting those for a while because I collect Colourpop makeup. We're gonna go ahead and start off with my least two favorite palettes. Let's get into it. Of course, when I first bought this palette, I loved it. That's why I bought it. I didn't buy it just because I liked it at first, but this is my absolute least favorite Colourpop palette. This is the Lovebird palette. This was an Ulta exclusive, I believe. This palette is basically majority pressed glitters. And then there's just a Super Shock and like one shimmery shade. I don't reach for it that much because it's made up of pressed glitters. Like, don't get me wrong, I love pressed glitters, but for some reason, I just don't pull from this palette. It's just my least favorite of the Colourpop 9-pan palettes. Okay, so I should have said this before, but I have 12 9-pan palettes, so that was number 12. So we're going to go down to number 11, and I believe this was like one of the first 9-pan palettes that they came out with. This is the Mar palette. This is what it looks like. This palette is really pretty. Of course, a con is that there are no shade names, which really sucks because Colourpop is known for their shade names and their out-of-the-box names, of course. But this is a blue and brown palette. It's just not me. Like, my favorite shade in this palette is this brown, but I have a brown in literally majority of all of my palettes. This one doesn't like give anything special for me. I do have all of these shades in other palettes for sure, so this isn't just one that I reach for. Number 10. Number 10 is the Frozen 2 palette. This is the Anna palette. This palette is so gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but there's other palettes in my 9-pan collection that are more used and loved than this one. You know what I think the problem with this one is? It's not an all year round kind of palette. I feel like I can only use this palette during the fall time just because the colors are so dark and cranberry, and they're just not a palette that I would use for the spring and the summer. Let's go down to number 9. A lot of people love this palette. I just don't necessarily love this palette, but I think it's a nice palette, kind of. The shimmery shades are awesome. That is the Honey palette. This palette is the all yellow monochromatic palette, and when you look at this palette, you're like, wow, that's a lot of shades of yellow. Like, I didn't even know that there's that many shades of yellow. But let me just tell you that there is no transition shade that's dark enough for me. When I pull for this palette, I have to pull from another palette because there's just not enough for me in this palette alone, you know, which is why it's number 9. I will say that there's some really pretty shades in here. Like, I've never seen such a pretty pressed glitter in my entire life. The one in the middle is so pretty, but the darkest shade is this shade right here, and it just doesn't do it for me. But I will swatch Queen Bee because Queen Bee is like the prettiest yellow I've ever seen. It is so pretty. Number 8 is another Frozen palette. This one is the ELSA palette. This palette I love a lot more than the Anna palette. It's so unique. I do not have any colors like this in my collection. This is just such a pretty palette. My favorite shade is this silver right here. I love this silver. It's called Ice Crystals, and wait till you see this shade. Oh my god, that is the prettiest silver ever. Y'all, okay, so this is a winter palette for sure, but who am I kidding? This is clearly a winter palette, but I love this palette so much. A lot of people don't like this palette, which, I mean, they say that the formula of this palette isn't the best of Colourpop's, but I think this palette performs really well. But it is not my absolute favorite of the 9-pan palettes. But this silver, oh my gosh. Out of these palettes, like, it's so hard to choose your favorite palette, so unfortunately this one is going to number 7. Number 7 is the Main Squeeze palette. It's inspired by watermelon, and don't get me wrong, it's nice, but red, not my color. Let me tell you, this palette comes in handy when I need like a shimmer red to go with like a sunset kind of look, you know? So this is such a handy palette, but it's not my favorite. There's not enough variation. Like, I know there's a lot of different red tones in here, but there's not enough variation when it comes to getting a different look for me. Like, the darkest color is this one right here. This palette does not excite me. All right, moving on to number 6. Getting down to the nitty-gritty of the good palettes that I love. So number 6 is the Just My Luck palette. This is what the packaging looks like. This palette is so nice. I love this palette. There's a lot of dark tones and as well as a lot of pretty shimmers. Like, there's a shimmer for every look that you need. One is called Mary Jane, and this green, I just love lime green. That's my favorite kind of green. But there's also like olive, like this bright green, the neon type green, like mint green. Like, there's just so many different types of green shades, and there's just a perfect amount of green in here for me when I need it. So this next palette I love. I have not used it on myself. I know. Just know that when I do use this Orange You Glad palette, which is number 5, that I'm going to really love it. I just don't have any orange that I've been wearing, so I haven't been able to pull from this palette. Like, if I had to choose over the Honey palette and this one to buy, I would definitely buy this one because there's more variation when it comes to darker shades. It's like this tangerine shade is so pretty, and there's a pressed glitter in this one as well. It is just a really pretty palette. Number four. We are getting down to it, y'all. We are getting down to it. Number 4 is the Ooh La La palette. This palette is so pretty. I love pinks. The pinks in this palette, they look so great, and then when you put them on the eye, they don't transfer as red or like blend away to nothing. They stay true to the color that they are, which is why I really love this palette. My back of my hand is still kind of wet, but it has like this pink like shimmer in it. It almost looks silver, but it's pink, I promise. This is like a great crossover of like pinks and purples, but it's mainly a pink palette, if that makes sense. It's just so pretty. If you love pinks or if you want to like dabble into pink, I definitely recommend this palette, which is why it's number 4. But let's talk about number 3. Number 3, y'all gonna think I'm crazy, but number 3 got to go to the Blow-In Smoke. This palette is just so unique to my collection. I don't have any other palette like this. I mean, who would? It's an all black and gray palette. Like, who would? Okay, this palette is amazing. It is such a great accent palette. Whenever I need a black, I grab this palette. Oh my gosh. If you need like a black to smoke out the eye or like just anything, like I've done a look with just using this palette and I think it came out really great. I used this palette on my roommate Amanda and she loved the look. She loves black, so she really loved the look that I created with this palette for her. But this palette is just so amazing. It is an accent palette, but if you're bold, you can use this palette just alone, you know? Like, there's enough in here for you to do that. Let's get down to number 1/2. You'll know once, you know. So I cannot choose between these two palettes, which is why I had to hurry up and try to use them in this look today to try to figure out which one is my number 1 and which one's my number 2. But I like really couldn't decide. But then I came up with this really pretty look today. I love this eye look I came up with. It's so pretty. And as you can see, my eyes are blue and purple, which are the Blue Moon and the It's My Pleasure palette. Okay, so it was so hard to choose between the two of these. This is an all purple palette. This is an all blue palette. The blue shades in this palette are to die for. The purple shades in this palette are gorgeous, amazing. They create the beautifulest look. But with uniqueness and what I really like, I really have to say that this Blue Moon palette is my number 1 palette. This palette is so beautiful, and this one's number 2. This really hurts to do. This is my number 2. How beautiful this palette is. So pretty. You can use this palette alone. There's enough dark shades in here, light shades, enough to blend out the shadow. Like, I used like 3 different purples in my look today. I think this palette is just so good, but the Blue Moon is definitely better. The Blue Moon takes the cake with this palette. It's just shimmer shades are just, you can't even beat that. First of all, you guys, I love the moon. So the packaging is a win for me. And there's Cassie. It like looks white-ish in the pan, but then like when you swatch it, it has like this blue shift. And then Tide Pool is what I'm wearing on the center of my lid, and this blue, just look at this. Like, this palette is just a winner. If you guys don't own any of the Colourpop 9-pan palettes and you can't decide which one you want, pick the Blue Moon palette up first. And if you want to just splurge, pick up the It's My Pleasure palette as well. I promise you will not be disappointed. Okay, you won't be disappointed. Alright, so those are all of my Colourpop 9-pan palettes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that like button down below. And I will see you guys in my next video. Peace.